Business for Peace is an international foundation that each year honours business leaders who have contributed towards positive change in society.
We believe all business leaders should aim to improve society and be more what we call business-worthy. This means leading an ethical and responsible business, which creates value both for company and society, a so-called win-win. The committee, made up of previous Nobel Prize winners, select honorees who exceed in their respective field. They're then awarded the prize at an annual summit in Oslo, Norway, bringing together leaders from all over the world to attend the event.
We are committed to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030, and we believe business is part of the solution. The award winners have shown that business can be a problem solver, and we want to tell their story, because the foundation believes they are the modern-day heroes and deserve to be recognized by us and by you. We are Business for Peace.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to tonight's talk on the future of travel. I know many of you just got back from your winter holiday break, so it seems like an appropriate time to talk about vacation and think about how your holidays might change in the future. We'll see. My name is Allison, for those of you that haven't been to our events before, and I'm on the team at Business for Peace. As you saw in the video, we're an international foundation based here in Oslo that believes that every business leader should have it as their purpose to improve society. Business has to be about the greater good, trying to solve the sustainable development goals, and not only maximizing shareholder profits. And so sometimes people ask us how this event series fits into what we do. And we understand that the private sector plays a role in almost every aspect of our lives, but they don't operate in isolation. They're working with governments, policy, trade agreements, consumer demands, the environment, technological innovations. And so we wanted to convene these conversations to really explore how the business sector can move forward given all these factors and the global challenges that we're facing. What was I going to say? So it is a very exciting time of year for us. You saw a little bit there about the award winners. I know who's winning this year's award. I won't tell you until March, but stay tuned for that. It's a good time of year for us. And then speaking of what's happening with the award winners, they come here in May to receive their awards, and we have a 2-day summit at that time. And we're also looking for volunteers for that. So if you'd like to get involved with us that way, you can talk to me or any of my coworkers afterwards for more information on that. If you're able to support us in another way, you'll see that we've had our VIPS number up. We're a bit late to the party on VIPS, but we're there now. You can find us. We're happy to host these events for free, truly. We want anyone to be able to join us, but your contributions do help us contribute to our mission and keep doing our work if you're able to. So that's great. I think that's all the housekeeping from me. I am someone who travels, but I'm not an expert in the travel industry, so I won't say anything more about that. I'm really pleased to invite our moderator on stage, Petter Guilli. He's the founder of 12 Years. He also just released a book on climate optimism. So he'll give an overview of the topic and then bring up our panel, and we'll get to your questions later. So we'll let him take it away.
Thank you. Another not travel expert, at least industry expert. My name is Petter, and you said what needed to be said about my company and me. So I'll start right away on my introduction. February 6th of 2019. It's my son's birthday. We have a party, and my mother-in-law and my mother takes a taxi from our house to Sandvika, and the price for that taxi is 671 kroner. Same evening, my daughter calls me from London, where she studies, and she says, "Dad, I'm not coming home on Monday after all, as planned. I'm postponing it to Wednesday." And I went, because even if they're over 20, you still try to educate them. And I was like, "Are you fucking crazy? You paid for the tickets?" And she goes, "Yeah, it doesn't matter. It costs 88 kroners one way." So, taxi 9 kilometers, 671 kroners. Airplane 2,306 kilometers, 176 kroners. And that makes me wonder, what's the future of travel? Is it going to be insane in the future as well? And then we go to 2017. Future in Our Hands released a report that says that 5.2 million Norwegians are flying as much domestically as 50 million EU citizens. We're flying domestically 4 times more than the Swedes. And no, we cannot make an excuse that we're a long-stretch country with all these small cities, because the major destinations are Oslo, or routes are Oslo, Bergen, Oslo, Trondheim, and Oslo, Stavanger. We all know perfectly well that there are going trains between these destinations. Almost at the same time, travel agency Berg Hansen releases a report or refers to a report that tells us that business travel, one-day trips, are increasing tremendously, which makes me wonder what's the future of business travel. And then back to our own travel and traveling. I've been fortunate enough to live 4 years in Singapore. My 2 eldest kids grew up there, and it was a fantastic trampoline, a springboard to travel all over Asia, to all the small cities and all the small countries, and see it all. And it's honestly become the glue in our family. It's a bond that we have. The sharing of the traveling experience is something we will always come back to. And not to talk about all the people we met in all the small family-run hotels, family-run restaurants, and the mom and dad shops all around the place. And all these people making a livable income from the traveling, both abroad but also in Norway. So what's the future for them? And what's the future for us who wants our kids to grow up to be global citizens? What's the future of travel for us? Finally, here in Norway, every day. How do we travel every day? I mean, from my house, I'm so lucky. I have 5 subway lines and 2 tram lines within 8 minutes. And it will take me down to the city in no time. Still, I have neighbors taking their cars and driving it to a parking lot in Oslo City. Every day. We have long queues every day of people sitting in their cars alone. And we've been talking about this for years, for ages, all these people traveling alone in their cars, they still do it. And you have me running around on a Voi, an electric scooter, and I have a love-hate relationship with them, because I think maybe they should be thrown away, but I still need them. It makes me more stressed. And the most stressful is my son, 19-year-old, telling me that, Dad, it's only old people who ride L-scooters. So, what's the future of everyday travel for all of us? That's what we're going to dig into today. It's not going to be about flight shaming. It's not going to be about doomsday. We're all going to die, not because of airplanes falling down, because of emissions. No, we're going to hear about solutions and opportunities. I do hope that. And I don't have all the answers, probably have none of them, but we have a panel that might have a few of the answers at least. And a wonderful panel, I must say. It's the 3 A's. It's Astrid Bergmål from Virke. Please come up to stage. Ane Furu from Møller Mobility Group. She's the head of new mobility services. And Astrid is leader of Virke Reiseliv. Forgot to say that. I have this card with this written on. And then we have Anders Fagernæs, head of sustainability at Norwegian. Give them all a warm welcome. And I'm going to start by making an introductory question to each speaker. So I'm going to start with you, Astrid. Please just tell us about your role at Virke and what you work with.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me, for inviting me to this discussion. As you said, my name is Astrid Bergmål. I'm head of Virke Reiseliv, and we organize the businesses within the travel industry in Norway. Both businesses who sell travels within Norway, but also out of Norway. So I guess that's one of the reasons why I'm here. The other reason is because sustainability and sustainable travels and tourism is one of our top priorities in Virke. And we work with it every day together with our members so that they can be better at providing sustainable travels to people. One of the last things we did, just to mention that, is that we made a roadmap for sustainable travels for the outbound industry that we launched in November last year. So I hope I get the chance to talk more about that later.
We'll see.
Anders?
Yes. My name is Anders. As head of sustainability, I mean, there is, in any organization, there's a lot of heads that thinks about this. Luckily, it's roughly 10-15% of the population. But so my job is to get those heads together and then try to get all the hands and the feet out in the organization to move in the same direction. And I think the sort of tagline is that we fly smarter, and we need to fly even smarter in the future. But I'm working for a company who's already invested billions of dollars in the newest technology, and I'm proud to say that I cannot come up with, and I actually challenge the people here to come up with a company that has improved the carbon efficiency by 33% over the last 10 years. So per passenger kilometer, we're traveling 33% more efficient, and that might be one of the answers to your solutions, or no, one of the solutions to your question earlier about the taxi, because what we do, I mean, in aviation, and this is a bit head around, but in aviation, it's actually the low-cost business model is the sustainable model, because it's rigged to be more resource efficient. Which means that when we reduce our fuel consumption, we also reduce our ticket prices and our CO2 emissions. When we reduce our prices, we can put more people into the planes. We have direct flights. So that business model right now is really what is the most efficient. But there is a great understanding in our business, although aviation is only now 2% of global emissions, CO2 emissions. It's still a sense of responsibility. We take that responsibility and we understand it, and we can feel it. So my first priority is to, as you have done, a roadmap in business. That's the strategy. So where are we going to be in 3 years? Where are we going to be in 10 years? Where are we going to be in 20 years? And then try to draw back from there. And right now, and my focus is right now, it's about improving operations. It's about flying even smarter, making use of the newest technology, data especially, to fly even smarter. And we're going to talk more about that later, hopefully.
And data, I think that's a beautiful transition to you.
Yeah, my name is Anne, Head of New Mobility Services in Møllergruppen. Møllergruppen is a leading car group in the Nordics and the Baltics. We're a family-owned Norwegian company that has actually delivered mobility for more than 80 years, but then based on the traditional car ownership model. Now a lot is changing in our industry, new technology, enabling new solutions, shared solutions. And we are also positioning ourselves to deliver transport in a new, flexible way. So I'm working on a daily basis on finding these new services that fit people's needs. And we're not doing this all by ourselves. We're doing this together with startups. In our current portfolio, we have investment in the car sharing company Virke, a Norwegian tech company with more than 500 cars now on their fleet here in Norway. We also have invested in Urban Infrastructure Partner, another Norwegian tech company, maybe most well known for their bike sharing schemes in Oslo, Bergen, and Trondheim, and also where we have a spin-out Urban Sharing, a tech company providing software as a service for other micromobility players. So this is what I'm working on, and also then finding what new areas to move into to solve people's mobility needs in a better way in the future.
I would like to sit on your shoulder sometimes just to see what you do. It's really interesting. Not literally speaking, though. And so, like you said, this is quite a broad panel. Just one thing. There's going to be an opening for Q&As in the end, just so you know that, because I think some people might be burning in with questions already. But we're going to start then, as we have a broad panel, with a broad question. And I'm not going to ask you why we should travel less, which people might want me to ask you. I'm going to ask you, why do humans travel? And especially, why should we travel? I'll start with you, Astrid.
people has always needed to meet and are always gonna want to meet and need to meet, both in private and when it comes to business. So I think it's if the discussion were to be about should we travel or not, it's very easy to answer that. Of course, we're going to travel. We've done it for ages, forever. We are explorers as human beings, and we're going to continue doing that. And we also know that traveling or the travel industry actually has quite a lot of good things, and they can solve a lot of the or be a part of the solution of quite a lot of the sustainability goals. We always discuss climate a lot, of course, because it's very important, but the sustainability goals is also about equality, getting women into work, getting development, economical what's it called, development in different countries. You understand what I mean, yeah. Anyway, but the social responsibility, all of these things, and the travel industry is really good at that, has been for a long time, and we are working on it all the time, on getting better at it. So I think there's so many good things about traveling, about meeting other people, and it's also the thing about when you meet other people, go to other cultures, everybody here has probably done it, you understand more. You understand more about people, about their opinions, their views, why they think the way they're doing. And I think we have to always also talk about the good things about traveling. And as you said, and as you described about your family, it is the glue in many families, and in many. Also at work, it's a reason why people go on a kickoff to a different country or a different place in their own country. It's because traveling and experiencing things together is a very positive thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I would like to echo that. And I think if we look 10 years ahead and the challenges that we have, and also the way that we see that the debate and the conversation in society is developing right now, sustainability, climate change is a very divisive topic. It divides us across generations, across our sexes. It divides us across geography, income, education. And I know for myself, after worked for a little while now, is that if we're going to set a target together and reach a goal together, for me at least, I need to trust the other person sitting on the other side to wanting to do the same. And I think to meet, speak, have experiences together, I really cannot see how we're going to change that. And I also think, and I also see this a bit like the trade that goes on, and I would like to take you to Telemarkskanalen. It's not that far away, but it's a wonderful place to travel. And if you go along the canal, it comes from Skien and then it feeds all the way into Telemark. And if you go there and you go to some of the old hotels, you can get a beer all the way in there that is brewed in Skien. It's a 60-year tradition. And they used to send logs down the canal and then get beer back.
Sounds like a good plan.
And it's a great plan. And then when you go there as well, you can take a boat, an old steamboat, and you can go down these different steps. It's a wonderful experience. But you also see that along those steps, that's where society has grown up. That's where the houses have been built. That's where they started making electricity. And if you sort of zoom out, then you can look at the Silk Road. And the same, and it helps to visualize how the ideas have sort of transported itself along these lines. And I think those ideas that everyone around here sits with, I think, to limit those ideas by saying that traveling is bad and instead of focusing on the problem, which is the pollution or the negative footprint, I think it's not very helpful for reaching that goal that we share.
then you also have that in Norway, a lot of people need to travel for their kind of daily life. You have more than 80% of the population living in rural areas, less than 10% actually living in dense urban areas. So when you, on a global scale, talk about urbanization, we don't really see the same trend to that in the same dimension as in cities like Shanghai, New York, etc. So we need to find good solutions for both people living in urban areas, but also better ways to travel or provide transport for people living in rural areas.
On that note, because you might actually have answered the next question already, which is interesting. But I'm going to read it anyway, if that's fine. When we talk about travel, we often focus on carbon and emissions. But when you think about travel, what problems are you really trying to solve? And it's boring to go the same way all the time, but I'm going to start with you again.
You mentioned it. The footprint is too big, and we have to reduce the footprint. And as you said, that's what the focus has to be about. How can we make that footprint smaller? And I think by talking about not traveling, it's just taking away the focus from the real discussion. And that's what we're all working on. Norwegian is working on it. My members are working on it every day. So yeah, I guess that is the problem, and we have to solve it. And everybody is working on it constantly every day. So yeah.
You want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at an airline, it's quite apparent what's the most material impact that we have. It comes out of our exhaust pipes. It is from the fuel that we burn to move people in air. So CO2, I mean, is definitely one of the biggest topics for us, and it is also where regulators are gonna hit us first. And they already have. Apart from that, I think, to me, it's important that the conversation we have is also balancing the environmental cost versus the social value. Because you mentioned, and in the beginning, you sort of drew the picture that the emissions from domestic air transport is increasing, and it's immense. But if we look at the figures, it's at the same level today as it was in 1999. We're not flying more domestically. And if you look at the increase that we have had over the last 5-6 years, that is mainly the 4 million people that we bring back from abroad to Norway, to your member business or businesses that are more parts of your business. And if we look at the economic value, and this is a lot of numbers now, but if you look at the economic value, Menon Economics did a study of that last year. It's 19 billion Norwegian kroners. It's 29,000 jobs. And it's easy to sit here in sort of Oslo-gryta, and we just have a Miljøpartiet De Grønne who has decided to put 4 of their Oslo, or everyone from Oslo in there. But I think we need to also think about all the businesses out there in the districts and their livelihood. So to me, that's important. I'm an economist, and it's important to understand that to have a glue, to have a society that works, we might have to live with some environmental cost for some time in order to make it run.
You want to comment on that?
I could also
short.
wait. I can wait. No, it's just I'm just thinking that I agree in so many things of what you're saying. At the same time, it's so easy to always find the excuses. Oh, it's so difficult for us. It's so difficult for our industry. And I think we just, because it's obvious that our industry, like every other industry, is important to and especially the tourism industry is important to Norway and the district and the rural areas, because you get a reason to live there. You get jobs, you get good societies to live in. But at the same time, we have to just say that, listen, the footprint has to go down, and it has to be zero emission. At some point, it has to be zero emission. So I think we have to all the time be like in front there and say that, okay, we don't know how to do it yet. We don't know how it's going to be perfect, but we know that this is the most important job we've got within our industry. And at the same time manage to keep the jobs, keep the value creation from the industry.
If you could briefly comment, or
very briefly.
All right, I agree, but it's also important to note that journey we're already on. We've reduced 33%, and with the new aircraft, I mean, we have 190 new aircraft with a listed value of $23 billion. That's going to improve another 20%.
All right.
So it's already happening. I think that's important to understand.
I know. We need to broaden it out of the company as well. There are other airlines as well, of course.
Well, yes, there are, but they're doing the same.
I guess our area of transport, we have kind of a lead when it comes to electrification, obviously. Now preparing for 2020 with almost 60% electric vehicles sold of the total new fleet. And we as a company are working and preparing ourselves to sell only electric vehicles from 2025. Another kind of issues when it comes to the sustainability part from our field of transport is how to share assets and how to utilize the total fleet in a more efficient way when it comes to sharing. We see Norwegians don't really want to sit together when they travel on a daily basis. Obviously, a hurdle.
That's an insight.
Which is it's a stickiness for our traditional model. But with kind of new autonomous features, we think this will open or reduce the boundaries for also sharing assets.
That's really good. No, sorry. No, but I was just thinking about just sitting on the tram. It's like, it's like there's 5 seats and there are 4 people occupying them. If you sit down, you'd feel like you're actually violating these people's space. It's like...
And you still have a lot of people not sharing their car with their partner even, so yeah.
Yeah. But not even with their partner. No. It's like, and I want to go off script 1 second and ask you a question, because I about electric cars, because a few years back an importer told me, you say importer, the distributor of cars, told me that we might not get all these cars that we want, because we said that we're going to have only new electric cars by 2025 in Norway, but as demand will increase in other countries, we will not be, because today Norway is prioritized. We also have the battery challenge that we're not producing batteries fast enough. So do you really think it's possible by 2025?
Yeah, I really do. Obviously, it's an effort. So we need to work proactively, and definitely proactively towards Volkswagen, which is our kind of main partner. And we need to work also with other partners to ensure that we have the infrastructure when it comes to charging, etc., that makes it easy and convenient for people to have electric vehicles and buy them.
So, good. And I was going to ask if you should we really buy one now?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
I would definitely.
So I'm late, but still a possibility. Now we're going to do, and we still have to do the big carbon question, though. I mean, it's because we said, it's true that emissions from airplanes is only 2% of the total global emissions. On the other hand, if everybody was traveling as much as Norwegians do, or as the Western world is doing, and I think it's fair to say that the Indians and the Chinese and the Laotians and the Indonesians and everyone should have the right to travel as much as we do. And if we all travel as much as we do today, the whole thing would go bust, honestly. And we have, I think it's around 8 or 10 tons of CO2 we emit each person in Norway, and I think we're going to need to halve that or something quite fast. And one trip, if I'm not wrong, a return trip to Bangkok is like almost 3 tons of CO2 per person.
No.
It's not?
No.
All right.
It's around 700 kilograms.
Return trip. All right. I have
This is a big
different
mistake.
numbers.
Yeah, this
I have
is a big
totally different
mistake
numbers.
that is out there. It's,
Okay.
The emissions data that are available out there is very different than what I
Okay.
have internally at my.
Then I have different numbers than you. But let's not make it a discussion about the emission numbers, but let's make it a discussion about the consumption of that and what we also consume of other stuff when traveling. Do we as consumers have a responsibility as ourselves, or should we just trust that you guys are doing great strides within your companies, that other companies are doing great strides, taking the fight, going net zero and trying to do all of these things? Should we then should we then just trust you, or should we put it on consumers? Or is it actually legislators that was correct, wasn't it? Yeah, thank you. That are responsible to fix it. And so how does policy play into this as well? Yeah, you want to start?
I think it's a dugnad, as we say in Norway. I mean, it's because what we see is that the consumers, when we ask people, and we do that twice a year, we see that the consumer says that they want better information so they can travel with a smaller footprint, and they want all of these things, but they want us to fix it, basically. And I can understand that, because today, if we look at ourselves, it's not that easy to choose it's possible, but it's not that easy to choose the plane with the lowest emission when you go into the internet or going to buy your ticket. It's not something that is just happening. You have to be quite interested to figure it out. So I think what we have to do from the industry is that we have to make it easier to access all of this information, so that you can choose the newest plane from Norwegian instead of an old plane from a company, because it's actually quite a big difference. And I think when you're discussing the numbers, it's also because it depends what you're looking at when you're gonna look into that. So I think the industry has to do a lot. We have to give much better information, and we have to also, for my members, lots of my members, they are both selling air tickets, but they're also selling the whole package. So we also have to talk to the people who are delivering the hotels when you go to a different country, to the people who are selling the adventure and everything you want to do there. And we have to work on making sure that the destinations that you go to work on this as well. But then it's also the consumers. And then when it comes to the consumers, it's about traveling smarter, most of all. And I'm thinking for myself, in my job, I have to travel a lot all the time. And if somebody should be having flight shame, it should be me. I mean, seriously, but it's the way it is. I mean, I can't do my job if I'm not traveling. It's a part of my job. But I would be happy to travel a little bit less, so I could spend a little bit more time with my kids, for example. So by making businesses think about this, how can we Skype more, for example? And also by thinking that maybe if I go to Bergen and Oslo quite a lot, like many people do, like you talked about, could I take the train every other week instead of going by plane every week? Could I organize my life in a way that I can do 5 meetings in Bergen, stay there for 3 days when I go, and then not go next week? Doing these smart choices. I think it's more about that than about taking away people's holiday and saying, you're going to Spain this summer, ooh, bad. It's not about that, because we're going to continue to want to do that. We have to see about what is the easiest way, and we're going to have to start on that as consumers, and then the industry has to work at the same time on solving this.
Yeah, I love that. And then nobody should say that my trip to the Eco Lodge in Inner Mongolia is more worth than your trip to Gran Canaria.
Exactly.
No one should be allowed to say that. Yeah. You want to
Yeah, I agree. I think all kind of parties have to contribute, and you have to have some kind of carrot and stick balance. To use the car as an example, it's not necessarily rational to have your own car, but people do, because it's flexible, it's convenient, it's a sense of freedom. However, it stands still 96% of the time. Though we see that, and to use myself as an example, I live pretty centrally in Oslo, in that Grünerløkka. I have my own private car. I used to be really flexible until last year, when they started to remove parking spots, starting to put kind of restrictions on how long you can park at one place. Then it's not that convenient anymore, and you nudge me over to seeking other solutions. And at the same time, I think car sharing providers like Hyre need to make it as convenient as possible for people to share a car. And that's why they have been set up as a technology company to remove all frictions from the customer journey of sharing a car and making it almost as convenient as having your own car. And at the same time, you need the regulators to dedicate parking spaces for car sharing to enable us to put shared cars as close to your home as possible. So it's kind of a triangle there that needs to work together.
You want to elaborate on that?
Of course.
Of course.
I think it's important to remember as people, as a person, I have two votes. I have my wallet, and then I have my vote that I can hand in at for the parliamentary elections. And with the wallet, I think as a consumer, I have the responsibility to choose, as you said, the smartest way to travel. For as a business, then it really is our responsibility to give you that information. And I think we've been way too bad in getting that information up in front of your eyes. But if you go into Norwegian.com now and you want to book a ticket, we have created a calculator that shows you how much more efficient or less efficient that flight with that aircraft on that city pair is compared to the industry average. And the industry average is set by ICAO, which is the UN body governing this. So it's coming, and I think in 2-3 years' time, I think we have decided on those standards, which also allows us to sort of compare it between different modes of transport, and that's really what I hear when I speak, especially to corporate customers. They are frustrated because it's impossible for them to actually assess. And then I think in the end, this is a value choice. And the experts at value choices is really our politicians. And to give one concrete example, I think one of the solutions that we can look at in sort of a 5 years frame is something called synthetic fuels. And this is a fuel which can be made out of CO2, water, through electrolysis and renewable energy. It can be used household waste, it can be used biomethane. And in Norway, we really have everything in place to create that. But to lift such an investment, you need 10-15 billion Norwegian kroners. And it's a completely new sort of a mix of technologies that needs to be put together. And it's very difficult to get our private fortunes here in Norway to invest in much else than buildings. And I think there is a big need for government there to say that, okay, this is what we want, create a stable framework, because this is investments for another 15, 20, 25 years, and predictability is key. And if you look at the airline industry, and you look at the margins and how they have developed, in Norway, they were down 23% from 2016 to 2017. That was the latest I found. Norwegian, we're not making a lot of money. Neither are our competitors. So to think that airlines are going to lift that type of investment and vertically integrate such big structures into companies, I think is a big ask. But I think we can work together. I think we can work together with the politicians and tell them that we believe in that. And the power I have at Norwegian is the purchasing power. So if I believe, and it's really about betting on horses here, but if I believe that that horse can win or that horse can win, I can sign an offtake agreement and say, okay, in 10 years' time, I need 500 million liters of this. And that's a lot of responsibility.
Come on.
If I can just comment on it, because I totally agree that the politicians need to be a part of this.
Yep.
Because as an industry, we really feel ourselves that we want to do the things and they want to invest. It's just that they need incentives for the politicians. So I totally agree. And the problem is that when you get, for example, like we got the flight passenger tax in 2016, like that.
Not predictable, yeah.
Not predictable, that is one thing. But the second problem with that tax is that it doesn't help anything on solving the problem within our industry. Because it doesn't go back to we could spend this money. I'm thinking if the politician were to say that, okay, here you have this tax because you're polluters, okay, fine. But let's spend this money on finding solution like you're describing now. That would be, I'm quite sure that the whole industry would just say, yeah, come on. That's a good way to do it, because then we can work together on finding the solutions for the future. But then, just one more thing, and that it's not only about the planes, because the politicians also in this country has to work more on getting a better train, get a better, what's it called? More trains, both within Norway, but also out of Norway and into Norway. Because the problem is that it's quite hard to go a lot by train between Bergen and Oslo. I don't know if you've tried it, but...
Always do it.
You always do it, but the thing is that...
Almost, because last time I did not.
the problem with it is that you probably noticed is that when you're going to go overnight, it's not that many. It's not that many beds.
No.
That's one of it. That's a problem. That's right. And the train doesn't go that often, so it's quite a lot of planning. If you can't just go into the train, like I don't know how many flights you have between Oslo and Bergen in a day, but I mean it's very convenient. Train isn't that convenient. You really have to want to do it, and it takes too long. So that's the three challenges you have to fix between Bergen and Oslo, for example, if it's going to be something that people can use when they travel for work, for business travel, which is also very important. In addition to what we have to do when it comes to planes.
All right, it's Q&As.
Okay.
It's time for Q&As already. We're going to have Alison walking around with a microphone. And before you start, just make your questions short and very crisp and clear, please. Not too...
Yeah, very short. Hi, my name is Robert. I'm the regional manager at Voice Scooters, so very happy that you're using them. Just to make sure that we work with your temptation to throw them into the water, I would like to give you some free credits. But thanks for the talk. I enjoyed it very much. And my question is to you, Anders. I fly Norwegian twice a week. I live in Stockholm and I fly to Oslo. I would love to do trains, but there are only 2 direct trains, Stockholm, Oslo. Otherwise, there's a layover. You need to change trains in Gothenburg, so that's not convenient at all. What is, the 2% footprint and so forth? I understand that, but what is important for me, and what you explained in the beginning, that you would get more into the data and the other things. How will you reduce the emissions? So it is better aircraft, right? But that's, in your case, that's Boeing, so that's on their end. The synthetics that you said you cannot do, probably also with the financial issues you're going through, right? What are some other things that Norwegian as a company is looking into? Thanks.
I'm very happy you asked. Because this is something that I find extremely interesting. It's really about how we fly and what our pilots do to fly smarter. So what a brilliant mind, a brilliant head, he's a fuel-saving manager. His name is Stig Patey. He's a captain, he's a mathematician, and he's a brilliant mind. He started working with something called Skybreathe, which is an open skies tool a year ago. And that allows the pilots to get into their phone apps feedback after every single flight based on the sensors that we have in the plane on 12, 14 different best practices right now. And it sort of says, okay, if you, for instance, one is to shut off one engine when you land and taxi in on the other engine. That can save 30 kilos of fuel maybe, but when you add that up, it becomes a lot. And when we look at and project how much that can save, it's 2% of our entire fuel consumption for 1 year. That's 44,000 tons of Jet A1. That's 140,000 tons of CO2. And if you compare that to the blending mandate that the government has put in now, which demands 0.5% of our emissions, and of our fuel to be bio, that's 15,000 tons. The total cost for the industry of the blending mandate is 100 million Norwegian kroner. The total saving that we get from Skybreathe is approximately 250 million 6 months ago at those prices. So, and that's something that our pilots working on every single day, and we have a full team implementing that because it's better for us, it's better for our customers, it's better for the environment.
Okay. Another question?
Hello, Sashi, NTNU. I'm a researcher who work with autonomous boats and ships. I didn't hear anybody here talk about electric planes because I read somewhere that there's a mandate to have all the domestic short distance travel replaced by electric planes by 2040. Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, the topic is future of travel, and we are talking about incremental changes. What we are really looking at is perhaps like dramatic changes. I mean, if you look at the newspapers of early 1900, one of the biggest problems in London City was how do we have roads clear of horse dung? Mm. And the way that was cleared by actually bringing in automobiles, not thinking about incremental improvement with horses or what we feed them. Any comments on that?
I can say something about electrical planes.
Yes, please.
Yeah, if you don't want to.
You can also say.
No, some of our members are working a lot on that and are also investing. And are part of Berg-Hansen is a part of the project that is planned between Bergen and Stavanger. And we also know that Widerøe is trying to be able to use electrical planes in Lofoten and in the north of Norway. So it's kind of a race, L-plane race, which is kind of the coolest race ever. But so they're definitely working on it, and they have different. They talk about different years. Berg-Hansen and the Bergen-Stavanger project, which Avinor is also a part of, it talks about 2024, 2025. Widerøe talks about 2030. Avinor says what you're referring to about 2040. That is Avinor who's saying that all inbound planes, their goal is that all inbound planes is going to be electrical by 2040. So it's definitely happening things, but I think it's very exciting, and we're really hoping that this is gonna work out. But I think at the same time we have to do that they're doing, and at the same and we also need incentives from the politicians on that. But at the same time we have to do everything that Anders just told us about that Norwegian is doing, and talk about the other kinds of fuels, because I think it's not either if, we have to do both to succeed.
Yeah, and if I may comment as well, and
no, I think we need to take another question.
All right.
I think so. We only have 10 minutes for questions.
That's all right.
So.
Yeah, it's kind of maybe be covered by that.
Hi, I'm Nina. I'm from the British-Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, and I'm a normal consumer, no expert at anything in particular. But what concerns me is stories or myths, if you like, that I hear about the batteries needed for our electric vehicles in Norway or velstående countries. The pollution that is actually created making those batteries, and how us living in District 1, if you like, is affecting the abuse of societies much poorer than ours. Could you comment on that, please?
Sure. Battery industry is still kind of in an early stage when it comes to battery for electric vehicles. And you have a lot of those issues you are pointing at. Now it's good to see that a lot of the big producers like Volkswagen is taking kind of a broader responsibility when it comes to production, having the whole kind of life cycle perspective, taking responsibility for the whole cycle. So to mention two concrete actions, they are now building their battery plant for producing batteries, but also a plant for recycling batteries. So from kind of pulling their hands off after they have sold the car, they're now taking or following the batteries and taking responsibility for the batteries from car sales, taking it back, recycling the batteries and putting out in new production again, which I think is something we will definitely see more of, and that will at least solve some of the issues you are pointing at. And at the same time, they are putting their purchasing power when it comes to energy also towards third parties demanding green energy, and in that sense being kind of a contributor on shifting from shifting towards more sustainable energy solutions.
Okay. Okay, we have one more question here. I think that will be the last question. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anders here. I see all of the ideas here are really good, the small incremental changes, and some of them are big. But of course, I know we're going to get better batteries in the future. They're going to be more efficient, more carbon neutral, more carbon storing, actually. They're working on carbon batteries. But what I'm hoping to see, and I hope you can comment on this, is new technologies that go far beyond this, because we cannot do the same as cell phones here. When you see a new cell phone comes out and it's a little bit better than the next one, it's a little bit better. We can't do that here. We don't have time for that. We need big leaps. So what types of technologies do you see, like magnets, that go far beyond what we have today? Who are working on that? Where can we find that?
Well,
I can comment on it if you want.
I think Hyperloop is one of the being developed, but I think it is also important, and I can feel the urge to move quickly, right? And we have sort of this set deadline of 2030. But especially in aviation, and I think in all transport and traveling, we bring the people that we value most with us. And security is of a key concern. And just to take you through that, and it's also a short over there, to create a new family of airplanes historically takes 25 years. To create a new generation takes 10 to 15 years. The electric airplanes that we're talking about, that's a new family. So I think it's important also, and if we touch upon the responsibility of business, I think it's important for us to be realistic and honest. And with the incremental changes, I can cut millions of tons of CO2 before 2030. Millions.
Could I add something? Or is it?
Yeah, and I'm going to add something.
Finished? Yeah. But I think we need to do both what you're talking about and what you're talking about, both the short line and the long run, because we can't just sit and say, oh, because it takes so long. We only have to focus on what we can do here and now, but we can't only focus on what we can do in the long term and not do anything right now. So we have to do both. And there's a lot of things going on. One thing is to electrical planes, but if you look into the cruise industry, for example, they also know that if they don't do something, if they don't lower their footprint quite fast, they will be in big trouble. If you look into the fjords in Norway, by 2026, it's zero pollution. I mean, if you can't deliver on that, you won't be able to enter the fjords. So there's lots of things going on. They are looking into what's it called in English? Hydrogen? Hydrogen. I can't say it. Yeah, but as you described, their problem is they have to know that it's secure, because you can't risk that you're out there in the sea and all of a sudden it's like kapoof, because so that's why we have to they're working on it all the time, but they have to know that it's secure. And if I could just finish by saying that on something that is quite short term but also optimistic, from what you asked about when you talked about Oslo Stockholm. Because there's this company now working on, both in Sweden and in Norway, that is called, in Norway it's two companies. In Norway it's called Oslo Stockholm 255. In Sweden it's called Stockholm Oslo 255, but they're working on the same thing and they're working together. And they are working on trying to get a train, a whole new route, from Oslo to Sweden. From Oslo to Stockholm. They can go in 2 hours and 55 minutes within 2030. And just to tell you about this idea, because it's so amazing, I think it's so amazing. They're gonna, if they get the politicians to say yes to this concept in 2021, they're gonna finish it by 2030, and they're gonna do it privately, and they're going to do it in the same way that we did it with the oil. We say that the private sector can build it, and in 50 years, the state gets it back. So they're thinking the same way. And this means that it can happen fast. So it's so exciting. You probably hear more about the project, but it shows that there's lots of things going on. Everything from the cruise ships and the hydrogen, that I can't say it, to this train project, and a lot of things on aviation. So I think the future of travel is very bright when you look at it from that perspective.
Nothing beats begeistering.
Begeistering.
You want that? Okay. And maybe we should just fix some other sectors. I mean, couldn't we just fix video conferencing properly? I mean, video conferencing is still like it was 10 years ago. Some guy or girl can't get it up. It's not, and you see them move and you can't hear anything. So why do we need to fix the airline industry? Can't we just fix video conferencing, for Christ's sake?
Petter, that's just you. That's the same thing.
Yeah, that's me. I'm getting old. That's the point. Yeah, I know. My son's saying the same thing. Yeah. So that was, yeah. We had one last question. Yeah, we have the wrap-up question. That was the note. Yeah. So, and we actually talked about it right now. So we're just going to go, and we did do it a bit. But if you have, what do you see in 10 years? I mean, and I mean, I've been hearing about jetpacks, and we should travel like that. You know, we should hang in drones and all that stuff. And someone even said that, virtual reality traveling is going to be the future. I'm not sure. Maybe we get these suits, but still, and we can get the smell and all that. But realistically, from your point of view in your companies, what do you think is the way we travel in each of your context in 10 years? Only 2-line answer. I'll start with you now.
I can start. I think from our perspective, in urban areas, you will see a shift away from the private car towards walking and micromobility solutions, biking, scooters, new assets that we haven't seen yet, combined with car sharing for the longer distances, going to your cabin, going to IKEA or whatever. You will see autonomous features improving the whole sharing solution, and new kind of business models, new more flexible solutions that will force even Norwegians to share their trip to a larger extent than we see today. And at the same time, I still believe that that the private car will be a complement to this, especially in more rural areas where it still will be the best travel solutions, at least for your daily commute.
Yes, I think you put on the realistic. I was going to tell you about my dream of having a zoo that I could zoom around, but okay, I'll try to be realistic. I think airplanes, the existing aircraft with alternative fuels, I think the carbon efficiency is going to improve. It is possible to improve that by another 40-50% on top of the next 20%. And by that time, if you take in the life cycle cost of building a railway, so the steel and the concrete and the biodiversity, I think when we can calculate the full life cycle, I think it's going to be competitive. I think it's going to be better to fly than taking a plane. And then I hope, but I'm not convinced yet, but I do hope that we have electric planes here in Norway on the short haul. I think if we're able to develop a new family of electric planes, smaller planes that we can have here in Norway, so people out in the districts can travel cheaper, because it's going to reduce cost by 80%. And the government and people are taking that investment. I think it's going to be fantastic. So I do hope that. I'm a bit uncertain whether that's going to happen.
I think we're going to have electrical planes in 10 years in Norway, commercially, but on short distances. And I'm not going to say what is a short distance, but I think we're going to have it. I'm quite convinced, because there are different companies who's really competing on this and want to be first. And we know that it's not only Norway, it's also UK, it's Canada, it's different countries who's working on it. I hope we're going to have the train in 10 years to Stockholm in 2:55. I also hope that it's going to be a faster Bergensbane, for example. That's some of the things. But most of all, I'm just very convinced that we're going to keep on traveling.
Yeah.
So we just have to fix it, because you can't share food virtually. You can't smell. You can, but it's not the same. So I think people are always going to want to meet and need to meet. And I think in this polarized world, we need that people travel and meet.
I do also think we're going to have electrical planes, and I actually did hear some questions and answers about that. Some Siemens did, and I think it was the NRK or someone did ask people on the street if they were comfortable flying electrical planes, and everybody was kind of comfortable with it, because they said that if it's going to be allowed by legislators, it's going to be fine. And then they talked about the people, if they're afraid of flying. It's like, yeah, some people are flying afraid of going up, and some people going on down. But one woman, she said she was afraid of being left up there. That will be my final word for today. Thank you all.
Can we get a round of applause, please? Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you all. So interesting. Obviously, this is just the very beginning of a conversation. The bar is open downstairs. I encourage you all to stay, keep talking, hoping you guys can stay around as well to answer some more questions. And then we'll see you back here on March 24th. Our next event is the future of oil. And Equinor is joining us, and we are very excited for that conversation as well. So thank you again. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you.